Hello, you're watching news from Kazakhstan. It is Thursday, November 15th. I am Nurbek Savitahunov. These are the headlines. Internet to blame. The National Security Committee explains why it takes no terrorists alive and provides statistics on the blocking of extremist websites. Blue Ring. Almaty residents enter the CIS Book of Records by making a circle of 1,000 people representing a blue ring. The flash mob symbolizes the fight against diabetes. New look. Moscow hosts an exhibition of Kazakhstan's modern artists. The National Security Committee believes Kazakh extremists do not surrender due to fear of tortures and humiliation. This opinion was voiced at the session of the lower chamber of parliament, which discussed the bill on anti-terrorist actions. We turn to our next report for more.
Terrorists in Kazakhstan never surrender alive and do not accept any proposed terms. Law enforcement agencies say this happens due to the lack of good negotiators in the country, and all problems stem from the internet. On Wednesday, Abdulkazimov, the deputy head of the National Security Committee, talks to the parliament and finally explains why not a single extremist faced trial in Kazakhstan. They made a decision to become terrorists, and all that propaganda coming from the internet tells the guys that they will be tortured if they give in. Those words really sink into their minds and they just cannot cross the line. While on the subject, Abdulkazimov was asked about the control of internet resources. The authorities have already banned 950 sites supposedly for promoting extremism. 150 cases have been passed to court. Nevertheless, anyone can still easily find advice on how to produce a makeshift bomb or read religious lectures promoting extremist ideas. Is there any monitoring of internet resources that promote terrorist ideology? All those sites are hosted in Europe and we cannot completely close access to them. There are many ways and technologies to bypass our control, such as proxy service and special software. The issue of separate prisons for terrorists has also been put on the agenda. There are 370 inmates in Kazakhstan now who were involved in terrorism. The only currently available way to separate strong leaders is place them in solitary cells. At the end of the day, the parliament passed a bill on counter-terrorism. With the law in effect, anti-terrorist committees will be set up in all regions of the country. The new law will mean broader president involvement into the issues of terrorism, making him responsible for defending procedures for use of weapons and identifying threat levels.
The crime was solved, but gold still not found. Police shared the details of a detective story of jewelry store robberies in Almaty. The Department of Internal Affairs detained the suspects. However, they cannot guarantee the return of valued goods to the owner. More details next.
Almaty businesswoman Darigata Natarova is still trying to recover. On the night of September 25th, 4 of her boutiques located inside Dana shopping mall were robbed. The total amount of inflicted damage is over $300,000. I own 4 large jewelry stores. The crime was captured by surveillance cameras and helped establish that 2 intruders remained in the premise for about 2 hours. Despite the fact that 9 alarm detectors went off during that time, the police did not arrive on the scene immediately. Akhanus Kimbaev and Azat Kinjalin were caught only a few days later, although no longer possessing the stolen jewelry. The investigation is very lousy and nobody seems to take any action on locating the stolen goods, even though one of the primary goals of the investigation is to return what has been stolen and compensate for damages. Almaty DIA thinks otherwise. Turns out their job is to investigate only, and they're apparently not responsible for returning the stolen items. We provide no guarantees of full recovery of the stolen goods. Our task is to arrest criminals and bring them to justice. During the conversation, the frustrated businesswoman revealed she paid $5,000 to one of the investigators to stimulate the search. However, the operation just continued upon the arrest of the suspects. For some reason, the investigator was fired from the police, while the DIA only ignored her complaint due to the lack of evidence. The trial is expected to begin in the near future.
A man in a Pavlodar restaurant opened fire at a group of people at the next table from a traumatic gun. As a result, 1 person was hospitalized with a head injury. Lately, similar cases are growing in number. Find out why from the next report.
While learning how to shoot is easy, one must be conscious to employ these skills only in case of emergency and opt for a shooting range for target practice. A late cafe visitor became a target mark for the shooter at a nearby table. The incident took place inside the entertainment parlor when two men suddenly came into conflict. It was triggered by a rude attitude of a drunk visitor towards the waiter, which in turn provoked the other patron to come to the defense of the cafe staff member. At this point, the criminal proceedings have been initiated on charges of hooliganism, and the detainee has been moved to a temporary detention facility. The handgun was recovered as material evidence. The case is currently under investigation. Traumatic weapons are becoming increasingly popular due to being readily available in arms shops to anyone holding a permit. A trading company's forwarding driver, Kirill Chestikov, bought a traumatic handgun 2 years ago for self-defense. Fortunately, Kirill has never used it for the intended purpose so far. I believe that one should think of a handgun as the last extreme means of self-defense and resort to it only in case of direct life threats. Otherwise, people can always refer to a power of convincing through conversation. The sports shooting professionals believe that arms should serve solely for peaceful purposes, such as shooting competitions. That is why athletes oppose public sales of all kinds of weapons. I don't support public arms sales, even when it comes to traumatic weapons. This is sure to result in numerous accidents and injuries because people lack weapon handling culture. In fact, they lack culture as such. The lack of culture for the drunken, disorderly cafe patron cost the injured party a broken frontal bone, brain contusion, and long hours of intensive care. Curiously, however, the police officers do not keep statistics of offenses committed with traumatic weapons, as regardless of severity of caused injuries, such incidents are always classified as disorderly conduct.
World Diabetes Day in Almaty was marked with a flash mob which entered the CIS Book of Records. This way they want to attract the attention of citizens to the problems of diabetics. Meanwhile, endocrinologists use their own methods by giving advice on proper nutrition and exercises.
Young Almaty residents decided to raise awareness about diabetes by setting a record. They quickly set up a gathering inviting everyone through social networks. The organizers decided to surprise the world with the number of participants. We're going to set the world record by creating this circle, which is a part of our anti-diabetes campaign. The circle will be made of 3,000 people. Almost at the same time, Leyla Zhubandykova, the president of Diabetes Association, is holding a press conference. Unfortunately, people with diabetes are not always welcomed in our society. For instance, many MPs have diabetes, but they prefer to keep silent about it. They do not talk about it for a simple reason. They are afraid of prejudice that a sick person might experience complications. But of course, there are patients with diabetes among members of the government and MPs. According to the World Health Organization, there are more than 200,000 people suffering from diabetes in Kazakhstan. The official statistics, as always, is stretching the truth and distorting data. Experts believe that, in fact, more than 1 million of Kazakhstan citizens have the disease. Unfortunately, in the current situation, Kazakhstan citizens can only count on themselves. Our main efforts and attention are directed towards prevention of diabetes, especially among younger people. We have to teach them how to live a healthy lifestyle, have the right approach to nutrition, and the right attitude towards sports. In the meantime, residents of Almaty, attracted by the anti-diabetes campaign, hurry to set the record. I will announce the results. The circle is 88 by 8.55 meters, and the number of participants is 1,120 people. The previous record has been shattered, and Kazakhstan has now the honor of having the largest blue ring in the CIS.
Members of Zhasotan, the youth wing of the presidential party, organized a campaign promoting a healthy lifestyle in one of Astana's trade centers.
The date of the event was specifically chosen by young party members, timed to the next scheduled Congress gathering of the Youth Zhasotan Party wing. Its members believe that dances will help young citizens counter deviant behavior. We want to emphasize once again that people need to develop themselves in all aspects of life, and not only in sports. We want to develop and implement programs to help university and school students adapt to new life situations and prevent deviant behavior among the youth.
An MP of the ruling Nuratan party, Daria Klibanova, voluntarily gave up her mandate due to personal motives. MP Murat Abenov was also stripped of his mandate after being appointed Deputy Minister of Education and Science.
While Abenov left for a new higher position in good spirits, Daria Klibanova's farewell speech to the former colleagues was quite intense. In fact, she did not clarify the reason for resignation. Klibanova thanked the president and mentioned that she misses working on television. Following Abenov and Klibanova on their way out of the hall, the speaker Nurlan Nigmatulin added to overall confusion, jokingly saying that he is leaving as well, but will be back. Persistent rumor says that the resignation of Klibanova may be related to family affairs. The MP's spouse, Alexander Klibanov, has made it to the Forbes list of the most influential businessmen of Kazakhstan. Klibanova does not give any comments regarding the matter. Can you please say why you're leaving? Thank you for your work, gentlemen. I just had to do it.
Yet another put-down of a ketchup and mayonnaise company in Almaty. People in uniforms with a city administration sign entered the company's property and began to break the fence and dismantle the construction. Aroma employees called the police.
We have a voice recording of the head of the district utilities agency sending them here to demolish and remove the fence. They hide their faces behind masks, and when we try to photograph them, they turn around and run away. But they're sitting in the bus in the bushes over there, and according to the police unit, the bus belongs to the district administration. Yelena Raikova, the company's head, believes the authorities want to intimidate her staff by their actions. But for now, the company plans to set guards near the warehouse, the construction of which cost the company over $1.3 million. 5 days ago, the police and Bostandik district administration officials attempted to raise Aroma's warehouses while citing company's illegal basis for their construction. But the company has all the necessary papers authorizing the construction of its facilities. Prominent Kazakhstan's lawyer Sergei Utkin took the case and intends to seek a fair decision in favor of ketchup and mayonnaise producers. Right now, the company's management believes that someone really wants to acquire these land plots. I find their theory very logical, but first we still need to find and talk to these people.
Brokerage companies say that it is not profitable to sell national IPO shares by one. Meanwhile, financial experts already made up the portrait of the potential investor, which is an informed and well-off client. On Wednesday, at the 5th Annual Conference of Kazakh Forum of Issuers, financiers discussed the investment activity of the population.
Kazakhstan stock exchange managers no longer doubt the necessity of the people's IPO for the country's population, especially now that the minor stockholders expressed readiness to buy shares in the amount of $6.5 million. However, the National Stock Exchange representatives are still not sure if Kazakhstan citizens have sufficient assets to convert another $162 million in shares into liquid funds. The vice president of the stock exchange, Andrei Tsalyuk, believes that the mission is possible despite a rather discouraging average shareholder's profile. I do not think an average citizen fully understands what an IPO is, despite our efforts to raise public awareness. It is a matter of personal choice and willingness to learn more about the financial market. For obvious reasons, the subject leaves most people indifferent. Stock traders advise buying shares in bulk, as going for retail at $5 per share appears to be costly and unprofitable. One person buying a share for $5 is equal to a corporate client with $200 million in terms of banking service and expense. Thus, we are unlikely to charge them a lower commission. Nurlan Magzumov came to Almaty from Zheskazgan to join the ranks of Kaztrans oil shareholders. He features a classic example of a middle-aged, well-off shareholder who seems to be well-informed about stock jobbing activities. People buy shares to speculate on the margin, just like the 80-year-old American billionaire Warren Buffett. He buys cheap shares and sells them once the price goes up, thus making net profit. To join the People's IPO startup, a potential shareholder needs to solve quite a few problems, such as opening a brokerage account, transferring funds, and paying commission. Nurlan Magzumov believes this is one of the reasons the brokerage companies are reluctant to work with the regions. The other reason is that Almaty is rightfully considered a financial center, while Astana boasts vast monetary assets to assimilate.
The leadership of Samruk Kazana Welfare Fund agreed with the government not to interfere in each other's activities. The statement of the agreement was made in Astana by the managing director of the fund, Peter House. The leadership of the company consulted with its subsidiaries. For results of negotiations, we turn to the next report.
At the presidential class hotel, the top officials of the country's richest fund share their future plans. From now on, Samruk Kazana will be even more corporate and expensive in nature. The managers also intend to clearly separate such concepts as shareholder and executive board. But the most important point of the meeting was the statement made by the managing director of the fund concerning the clear separation of business. An agreement on non-interference in business is due to be signed between the government and the fund. However, it does not mean that we will do shadow business. Our fund will work in a trusted, transparent business environment. Back in May 2012, they expressed grave concerns about the isolated policy of the fund, as the larger part of the state treasury, about $87 billion, is kept there. State assets are 100% owned by the government. They include large national companies which have a significant share both in the economy and the GDP. Once transferred to Samruk Kazana, the assets are impossible to monitor. The fund turns out to be a state of its own, where so-called advanced managers conduct non-interference policies. At the same time, such criticism makes no difference for the managers of Samruk Kazana. The fund is never subjected to financial audits. In January 2012, senators approved the board of directors to control all financial flows. A specially developed law let the supergiant finally withdraw all its assets from government control. Even the head of the audit committee had to admit that his agency has no authority to control the expenses of the national fund. It is beyond our power to monitor the effectiveness of the holding company. We lack potential to audit this huge developing state of its own. Its assets are set to commensurate with the state budget. The activity of the mega holding company is criticized not only by the MPs and senior officials, but also by independent financiers. One of the popular media outlets published an interview with the ex-deputy prime minister, the incumbent finance minister Oraz Jandosov, who said that the merger of Samruk and Kazana was a grave error from the start, especially since the fund has failed its main task to improve the well-being of ordinary people.
In cultural news, the works of Kazakh modern artists were featured in the well-known gallery of Marat Gelman in Moscow. Maldakul Narambetov, Almagul Menlibayeva, Yerbosin Meldibekov are known around the world. The project can be easily called commercial. There is no market for modern art in Kazakhstan, thus the works of artists can be bought at lower prices. Critics positively evaluate the works, even though they are often very edgy.
Kazakhstan's contemporary art exhibition is in Moscow for the first time in the past quarter century. It is held in one of the capital's best locations. Russia's famous gallery owner Marat Gelman decided to reopen his popular venue with an exhibit of Kazakh artists. I chose these artists because they are the best. We are overly confident of their superior knowledge in the matter. There was a popular joke in Moscow back in 1993. The best poet is Pushkin, the best fruit is an apple, and the best gallery owner is Gelman. Exhibiting the best of the best is nothing new for Gelman. This time, 3 out of 7 exhibited artists are known internationally. Curiously, they're not quite popular in their own country. Unfortunately, the country does not have a policy related to contemporary art. We were in the same situation about 20 years ago. Nevertheless, I strongly believe that in about 5 years from now, people will be begging for these artists' contact information in order to buy their works for the National Museum. Walking around the exhibition, one might realize that contemporary art is not for everyone. But there are many people in Moscow who appreciate the mixture of ethnic and modern schools, even though sometimes it is hard to even look at the presented piece. Now we know that Kazakhstan is not only about the steppe nomads, horses, and handmade carpets. There are very talented Kazakh artists indeed, and we should find out more about Kazakh art. The ethnic artworks of Almaty artist Alexei Shindin attracts quite the attention of visitors. No one seems to ignore the applique of household rubbish on the left. Atavisms is the name of the project. I meant for it to reflect the ornamental art. It was hard to refrain from asking such an artist of how would he portray contemporary Kazakhstan. It would definitely be using something with barbed wire reflecting the isolation of the country. There were plenty of visitors at the exhibit opening, with art collectors showing as much interest as fine arts experts. The word behind the scene is that some of the works have already been purchased.
Poets in Kazakhstan are still hungry, little known, and not really in demand, but on Wednesday, November 14th, young poets were honored and congratulated with the publication of their verses. Critics believe that with time, the quantity of poets will lead to the emergence of quality works. What do poets write about is covered in the next report.
This Wednesday event was organized in accordance with the highest official standards. Young poets surprised their experienced colleagues with professional efficiency. It is unheard of when the books of 23 poets were published all at once. On average, the books of 10 authors get published every year, but this year we have a set of 23. At the same time, the rewards of the authors are not really impressive. Although the monthly cost of living in Kazakhstan is about $115, the poets were paid only a little over $140 per book. They do, of course, have reasons to feel offended by small rewards. In old days, we used to receive bigger payments, but at least it's something. Nowadays, just like always, poets write mostly about love. Such an occasion would not be complete without the presence of critics. Of course, they know better how to write immortal poetry. It is not easy to publish 20 or 30 books a year. They will be lucky if 3 or 4 of them will turn out gifted. But it could happen that none of them are. Why the need for these artificial rewards? We're just engaging in pot boiling in literature, so to speak. Omit Meni, which means forget me, is Kanagat's second book. His first work was Kazakhstan, the paper town. This book became a mirror of modern society. It reflects the drawbacks which exist among us. It talks of one person trying to set another one up, and about the times when officials care only about themselves, when everything gets solved only on paper. These are the topics which I try to cover. In the meantime, the Ministry of Culture is encouraging poets to go on, by all means, under its campaign, publication of socially important literature.
That is all we have time for now. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow.